So prior to my time here on YouTube, I actually used to make a ton of interior design content over on TikTok. And I will say there's been one video that has always really stuck with me, and it's the concept of eclectic interiors being the most timeless interior design style. So one of my TikTok videos actually best described this than I could right now in this moment. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and just share it for you guys here so you can watch along, and then we can deep dive a little bit more into different interior design styles and how you can use these and layer these to make your home feel very timeless and out of the trend cycle. Anything that's trending today is going to be outdated tomorrow. One of the best ways to avoid falling in and out of trends is actually by selecting a timeless style. I would look no further than eclectic interiors. Eclectic design is often considered a timeless interior style. It is a combination of various design elements from different eras and styles. By blending different design elements together, eclectic design creates a unique and personalized look that is not tied to any specific time period or trend. It also allows for a lot of creativity and individual expression, as there is no hard or fast rules about what design elements can or cannot be combined. The freedom to mix and match different styles means that eclectic design can evolve and adapt over time without losing its essential character. It's also easily customized to fit different spaces and purposes. Whether it's a home office, bedroom, dining room, or living room, eclectic design can be adapted to create a cohesive look and feel that is unique to the space. Let me know in the comments if you have an eclectic home and what elements you find create a timeless look. Truthfully, this concept has actually been the basis of a lot of my interior design content here online. I love helping people identify their favorite styles and how they can pair them or mix them in their interiors. So I actually wanted to use this video as the start of a new series where I identify different design styles and highlight what I think are the best ways of using certain styles, or I suppose the easiest ways that you could use that style and mix it in with other styles. And a while back, I actually started creating these furniture menu downloads that basically were lists of different styles and just images of furniture within that style that you could use to grab from to make different mood boards, or so you could use that to kind of pinpoint your own vision board for how you'd like your own space to look. Now, in the past, I have charged for these, but I think with this new style series, I'm actually just going to open them up as a free download because I really do think there's a ton of value in actually identifying what your style is and then having actual inspiration images that you can pull from when you are making a mood board or a vision board for your space. So if that's of interest to you, definitely make sure to check out the link at the bottom of this video where I will have the furniture menus that I have created there. I'll be honest, I do not have menus made for all of the styles we're going to be going over. But if this is something you find value in, definitely let me know your favorite styles in the comments, and I'll try my best to make furniture menus for those styles as well. So the first style we're actually having a look at is academia interiors, and generally people categorize this as either light academia or dark academia. This is simply just referring to the colors used in either scenario, but the foundation of the style remains the same even if you're looking at light color tones or dark color tones in the space. Personally, I would categorize academia as maximalist in nature. Usually there is a lot of items kind of cluttered around in an academia space. For instance, when you're looking at artwork, it's not usually just one singular piece of art. It's usually a gallery wall on display in a room. And art isn't necessarily just displayed on the walls in academia interiors. Usually it's also shown through in accessories. So things like sculptures, boats, trophies. There's always just kind of little historical artifacts that are hanging around, or I guess cluttering up an academia room. And if you are looking to incorporate this style in your home, a key element that you do want to keep in mind is in fact historical elements, especially things like lighting. Usually you're not going to see anything super modern. It's always going to be kind of like an old school lantern type light, or even like a schoolhouse pendant is usually what you're going to see. Same thing with table lamps and reading lamps. They're always going to have kind of that old world look to them. And the same thing goes with textiles. Usually in an academia space, there's going to be just a lot more decoration. Textiles are going to be a lot more ornate. For example, you don't usually see plain area rugs. It's usually going to be some sort of a Persian area rug. And the best way to incorporate any style in your home is going to be authentically. I will say this is particularly important with academia interiors because the furniture you want to be looking at is antique in nature. So you're never going to get that same look and feel of an academia space if you're looking at mass-produced furniture in this way. So for example, a key element in this style would be something like a rolled arm leather sofa. You could go out and purchase a leather sofa new, but it's not going to give you the same look as if you were to find kind of a vintage sofa where the leather's been kind of worn in and patinaed. This is really going to give you that authentic look that you're looking to achieve when you're working with this style. I would also say that specialty antique furniture works really well in these types of spaces. So things like a roll top writing desk, or even like a really chunky writing desk. Those are items that are just so classic to the academia style, and it's really going to portray this look in your home if that's what you're trying to achieve. So the next style we can look at is Japanese Zen. This is actually one of my favorite interior design styles. Unlike academia, it's a lot more simplistic in nature. It's definitely more of a minimalist style. There's not a lot of clutter in these spaces. The goal of a Zen space, I will say, is kind of mindfulness, clean lines, just really taking away visual clutter. And in doing so, it kind of just takes away clutter from your mind when you're in these spaces. The overall goal is to feel very calm, very serene. Zen spaces also highly favor natural materials. So again, with the idea of being authentic, we don't want to try and pick faux materials. So even if you're picking a piece of furniture that's a faux wood, you'd be better off using a genuine wood item if you want to authentically show this style in your space. Other natural fibers that you could use in a Zen-inspired space would be jute, cotton, rattan, even linen is a really nice look in these rooms. And what sets Zen apart from other organic interiors would be the use of just very low profile furniture. So you'll find there's never any big, bulky, or tall items in a Zen inspired space. It's usually going to be quite low profile and low to the ground. For the most part, you want to use very organic shapes and natural textures throughout a Zen room. And if you are looking to incorporate any kind of smaller ornate details, this is just best achieved if you are looking at something that's actually Japanese inspired. And it can just be a really nice detail to add if you are looking to incorporate some Zen elements in your home. Next up, we have Art Deco, and this one is actually a very popular request that I get on my other series on my page, which is where I do actually take your favorite interior design styles and I show you inspiration images that reflect all three of your favorite styles. And lots of people just love Art Deco. And to be honest, this one is not one of my favorite styles. I do find Art Deco to be kind of interesting and kind of hard to incorporate in your home. And this is because it's often very mass produced. So different furniture companies have taken the concept of Art Deco and tried to give kind of a modern take on it. And in my opinion, it just does not hold up to the actual traditional style of Art Deco. So personally, I'm going to leave kind of that mass produced aesthetic of Art Deco at the door. When we're having a conversation about this style, I'm talking about the true, authentic, antique version of Art Deco. And the best way that you can incorporate this in your home is using actual authentic pieces from this time period. So typically Art Deco furniture has a very unique look to it. Often in soft seating, you'll see kind of curved and fluted lines. When it comes to wood textures in an Art Deco space, it's usually using two-tone woods or again, you can see some of those kind of fluted curves to a wooden piece. In Art Deco, polished wood was really popular. Different textures like burl wood or just some form of a little bit more detailed wood piece is usually what was used. You don't see a lot of Art Deco done in like a natural texture or any kind of a rustic finish. It's very polished, very pretty. Often I would consider it also kind of feminine in nature as well. And I will say, if your style leans a lot more towards rustic lines and you are looking to refine that a little bit, mixing in a couple Art Deco pieces can often really help. And when it comes to Art Deco in textiles or wall treatments, usually the patterns are going to be quite geometric or floral. And this is usually where color and pattern really comes in, is in either a funky wallpaper or a geometric area rug or toss cushion or something of that nature. Next up, we have California interiors. This one, of all of the styles on the list, I will say I find to be the most trendy. So this is an interior design style that we've seen a lot, I would say, over the past decade. Kind of California cool interiors have been very trendy. So again, I will say, if you are not layering this style correctly with other design styles and you just overcommit to this in your home, I will say in the next, 10 years, the next decade or so, you may find that your space starts to feel a little outdated, especially if you're going the route of very mass-produced furniture items and you're not trying to be very authentic when you're selecting this style. One of my favorite elements when it comes to California interiors is actually the influence of the Southwestern style, as well as some Spanish details as well. Personally, I think this is best achieved in some of the smaller accents, so things like area rugs and accessories. This is just a really nice way of adding in texture and pattern that sometimes a California interior can fall a little short on. Often this style is seen as very light and airy, usually very white walls, light woods. So sometimes if you're not mixing in those nice Southwestern accents, it just can feel a little bit bland and a little too neutral. And this style is very earthy, so incorporating lots of real plants and natural materials and textures really just goes a long way in making the space feel quite warm and authentic. So another very popular style is organic style, and usually people will add a separate style to this. So whether that's modern organic or academia organic, in theory, Zen as well as California interiors could be classified as organic styles, but I do just kind of want to dive into organic as its own kind of signature style here. And I do think that's a very important note to make when you are layering styles, is some of these styles do share similarities and some overlap. And that's what I will say makes certain styles easier to pair with one another, because there is already overlap in some of the elements in which they embody. It can be really difficult if you're looking to layer styles that do not share similarities and do not share some key elements, because that's really where you start to find kind of a contrast and a push and a pull between the different items you might be adding in your home. And that's not to say that it can't be done, but if you are somebody who's just looking to pull your home decor together without actually hiring a professional, it just makes it easier if you are picking a couple of styles that already go hand in hand. That's the easiest way to layer items. But of course, if you do have something that's a little bit trickier or a little bit challenging, hiring a designer to help pair those together or commenting them here on this video so that I can put them together in a video for you, that can just simply be the easier way to go. So in organic interiors, these are very low stimulation. So you generally do not find loads of color and patterns in these spaces. Usually it's going to be very natural, very neutral. The interest really comes from the layers of texture in the space. And just like we've mentioned for all the other styles, it's especially important in organic interiors that you're using authentic materials. And when you are trying to really layer textures, this is where I find certain wall treatments go a really long way. So whether that's lime washing your walls or using a grass cloth wallpaper, this is just another layer of texture that you can be adding into the space that doesn't necessarily always have to fall on your furniture or accessory items. And of course, sometimes when we're using very natural materials, the space can start to feel a little bit heavy. So I actually would really recommend, when you're working with an organic style in your home, is actually focusing on very curved lines, and anywhere where you can eliminate an angle on a piece of furniture, this is just going to help lighten up the space. Okay, next we have Bohemian, and I have to tell you right now, it is not boho. I am not talking about boho interiors. I am specifically talking about Bohemian interiors. And if you need a further context on what I mean by that, I will put up a picture here of what boho usually looks like. And then here, I'll put up a picture of what I mean when I'm talking about a Bohemian interior. So I personally am a big fan of Bohemian interiors. Reason being is I find they are jam-packed with personality. You truly cannot pull off this style if you're only shopping for mass-produced store-bought items. A true Bohemian space is going to be a reflection of the person that's living there. So while there are some similarities that we can kind of highlight between most Bohemian spaces, these really do vary from home to home and person to person. So this is really where your own personal items really do get to shine. This is the best style, in my opinion, if you are somewhat of a world traveler or you've lived many lives within your one lifetime. This is where you really have your personal trinkets on display. I think this is a great style for somebody who collects things, because Bohemian interiors really do emphasize having things on display or having a collection of artifacts out for people to look at. And because it's such a maximalist style, things like textiles, so instead of just having one particular area rug in a room, you might have 3 different area rugs that you're layering on top of each other in a room. Same with toss cushions. You wouldn't just have 2 matching toss cushions. You would have an array of different mix and matched toss cushions. Generally, you won't find anything symmetrical in these spaces. Usually things are just not perfectly placed. It's very lived in. Often I also find with Bohemian spaces, things are constantly evolving. You're constantly bringing new things into your home and removing old things. You're bringing in a new piece of art from your latest world travel, or you're displaying something different each week or every month. Your space is always just kind of having a bit of a reshuffle. So one of the reasons you would layer a style like this is because it can feel quite overwhelming. But incorporating Bohemian elements into something like a Zen-inspired room, this can kind of spice it up with a little bit more personality. It can just add a little bit more interest. So this is actually one of my favorite styles to layer with, because if your home feels like it doesn't have a whole lot going on, just sprinkling a little bit of Bohemian in the mix can add that touch of personality that you might be missing. All right, so next up is modern interiors. Again, this is not, I would consider, one of my favorite styles, simply because I am a little bit more of a maximalist. But modern interiors are really cool. So while the modern style kind of matches some of the other styles we've chatted about in the ways that it's very clean lines, low profile furniture, it does vary slightly when it comes to the actual materials. So things like concrete, acrylic, even stainless steel, these are all materials materials that we don't often find in furniture and decor. It's usually a little bit more when you're designing like a kitchen or something like that, that you might get into some of those unconventional materials. But incorporating those into your furniture and your accessories can be a really easy way of adding kind of a modern flair to any room. And modern spaces don't incorporate a ton of small details. Usually furniture is not really going to be ornate in nature. It's usually going to be just very stark, very blunt, and the detail really comes in through the materials that are being used. Pops of color and artwork can also be a really fun way of pulling together a modern space. Sometimes I find a modern room can feel very cold and very stark, so using fun pops of color or even a piece of artwork that incorporates, different tones throughout the room, that can be a key way in bringing that space together. And using this style to layer with, I think, is actually most successfully done if you have kind of a rustic home. Sometimes you need a modern element or two to make your space feel kind of current and just have a little bit more of a modern take, as opposed to feeling very antique or very rustic. This can just be a nice way of refreshing one of these spaces. And the last design style that we can chat about in today's video is going to be industrial. So it's very similar to modernism, where the materials are going to be quite harsh and very stark. This style is pretty clean lined. For the most part, it's going to be minimalistic when it comes to the decorating of the space, but it is going to feel quite maximalist in the materials used. So things like concrete, iron, stainless steel, these are the types of materials that you would find in an industrial space. And I would say for the most part, industrial design really lacks a certain level of softness. So even on soft seating, it's a little bit more like leathers or like a heavy wool. You're not going to find a ton of cottons and linen in an industrial styled space. There's also a huge focus on the architectural elements of an industrial styled room. So this can be really hard to pull off if your space doesn't already lend itself to this style. Generally with industrial design, we're thinking about things like loft living, so really tall ceilings. Maybe there's a lack of walls. It's just very open concept. Often rooms are divided by levels or even railings, as opposed to actual brick and mortar walls. Speaking of brick, that is, I would say, an element that's very popular with industrial design. And obviously, because this style is so stark and kind of cold, I do find this is one that desperately needs to be layered with. As well, if your space just architecturally does not lend itself to industrial style, this is just a fun way of adding industrial elements into your home without actually fully committing to it in your home decor. So that's all the styles for this video. I do have 6 new styles in mind that I'm going to incorporate in the next video of this series. If I missed your favorite style, please drop it in the comments so I can incorporate it in my next video. And don't forget, I do have my style layering series where I take the different styles I've highlighted in these videos and show you how you can group them together and incorporate them in one cohesive look. So definitely comment your favorite styles if you're looking to see how I could mix and match them in that series as well. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in my next videos.